Thank you very much. So, as said, I've got three hats today. I'm representing Julie's Bicycle as the Associate for Events and Festivals. A one-liner for Julie's Bicycle for those who haven't come across the organisation before. They're a not-for-profit which makes environmental sustainability intrinsic to the business of the creative industries. And I'll talk a little bit more about Julie's Bicycle in a minute. Another hat is Powerful Thinking, which is a festival industry think-do tank, tackling energy sustainability in the outdoor events sector. My third hat is as one of the directors of Shambhala Festival, proudly crowned the UK's Greenest Festival in 2013 by the Greener Festival Award. So a little about Julie's Bicycle. Julie's Bicycle, founded by CEO Alison Tickle, who wasn't able to be here today, works across the cultural sector to support and facilitate sustainability. Their work spans museums, theatre, varied arts providers and the music industry, and they provide online tools to measure the carbon footprints, of 1,000 Arts Council national portfolio organisations, helping them to measure and reduce impacts. In 2007, they published the First Step report, which aimed to create a foundation for their approach to their work. And the study found that the sale of music products and live music performances in the UK created at least 540,000 tonnes of carbon dioxide equivalent a year. And to put this in perspective, this is roughly equivalent to the average emissions of a town of 54,000 inhabitants, or 180,000 cars. So that was the starting point. What's the scale of the problem in the music industries, and what might the focus be for the work? The main contributors, of course, are music venues, i.e. buildings, the heat, light and power, CD life cycle emissions and audience travel, the latter being almost half of the impacts. So broadly speaking, Julie's Bicycle's work has been guided by solutions for tackling these priority impacts in the industry. And very briefly, that has included programs around sustainable CD packaging, mainly looking towards card instead of plastics as the source material, working with arts and music buildings to reduce energy consumption and use renewable supplies, and working with arts audiences to make greener travel choices. I've picked out a few brief examples of what some arts organisations have achieved in recent years. The National Indoor Arena Birmingham, as part of the Broad Street District Energy Scheme, which is a large commercial district tri-generation energy scheme, which features a 1.6 megawatt equivalent CHP unit. The low carbon energy is then used to heat buildings connected to the scheme through thermal networks laid under the streets of Birmingham, which interconnects with the scheme's buildings. The scheme saves 3,800 tonnes of CO2 per annum. So this is starting to happen quite a lot. The arts sector and arts buildings are really realising that not only can they have an impact on their bottom line in terms of costs, partly through revenues created through these schemes and partly through savings, they can make a positive contribution to their environmental footprint. Another inspirational project in London is the Village Underground. It's an East London-based music venue which describes itself as part of a creative community rather than just an arts venue. As well as being a cultural hub, Village Underground has solar panels generating 5 kilowatts and creates enough energy to run its entire lighting and office equipment. The remaining energy is supplied to Ecotricity on a green tariff. Now, there's lots more examples, but that was just to illustrate that it's actually becoming fairly common that the arts sector is recognising that the buildings that it inhabits is an impact that it can have make positive choices about. I think there's a real opportunity, and this is something which Julie's Bicycle has been exploring in recent years, to cluster arts buildings to bulk buy green tariffs, therefore achieving the environmental aims and also reducing costs, because of course green tariffs often cost more, and that's something that Julie's Bicycle I know has been talking to Good Energy about for a number of years. But perhaps most excitingly, JB is now working with the Arts Council to support and monitor almost 1,000 national portfolio organisations it's become a mandatory clause of funding that organisations monitor and report back on environmental factors. And it's starting, although this year has been the first annual report from the programme after 12 months, it's starting to show that simply by virtue of people being forced to be aware, or encouraged rather, to be aware of their footprint, it's reducing impacts considerably. So to sum up the arts sector generally, I'm thinking about what's the opportunity. And I think one of the opportunities is that the arts sector is made up of small to medium creative and dynamic businesses. They are able to respond should they be inclined. It's an audience-facing industry. It has the potential to have a real impact on attitudes. And whilst arts does not want to be defined, perhaps, by climate change alone, because it seeks to represent and explore the human experience at large, it can begin to have the difficult conversations, explore empathy, fear, the impacts through its various art forms, and in a way that advertising and public information channels often can't reach. And this brings us neatly onto the festival world, where I believe there's a huge opportunity to influence behaviour. We have captive and often young audiences, we have brands with kudos, and we have lots of media exposure, which I think is a recipe for impact as long as communications are effective. I'm part of a think-do tank called Powerful Thinking. We're tackling energy sustainability in the festival industry through a forum. It's the industry itself creating its own response rather than an organisation external advising the industry, which I think in this case, with such sort of headstrong and determined characters often at the helm of festivals, is the most appropriate way to access people and work with people. The steering group for Powerful Thinking at the moment represents 300 festivals with an audience of over 500,000. And we've over 1,500 organisations engaged across the stakeholder and supply chains. The main thrust of the work is to encourage demand reduction, efficient systems and renewable supplies. So a brief history of Powerful Thinking to set it in context. In 2010, a number of us were thinking, why haven't we got options? You know, we're looking specifically at temporary energy supply, solar and wind at that time is not meeting the real-time demands of festivals. Waste vegetable oil is niche and most generator companies aren't offering it. So there were a number of us in the industry that were frustrated that the market hadn't provided the solutions for us yet, even though us as clients, potentially the demand, were wanting solutions. But the first thing we did was we did some baseline research just to see what our starting point was. And we discovered that 12 million litres of diesel were being consumed by the festival industry each summer, and that the festival industry at that point was being powered by less than 1% renewables. So that gives you a sense of the challenge. We were really starting at the bottom. So we set up Powerful Thinking to support a sea change in energy management, and what we're hoping is that over the next sort of 15 years we can achieve a genuinely low carbon, energy efficient festival industry. We did some more research in 2011 to get deeper. We did that with De Montfort University, and we wanted to look at how energy was actually being managed at festivals and where the opportunities to achieve efficiencies were. And what we found was quite incredible. It was a spot check rather than an extensive study, but we just went to festivals and looked at how generators were performing. And the majority of generators being run at less than 50%. Many of them were being run at less than 25%, and we were finding examples of generators which were 8 times the size they actually needed to be for their function. So we realised that we had some powerful facts to start to work with the festival industry, because of course the cost case when you're talking to businesses is everything. So suddenly we had our way in, and we've spent 3 years developing resources. We now have a website, we have a comprehensive guide to energy management, fact sheets, and we're starting to develop campaigns in the context of launching a vision for where we want to be as an industry in 2025. If I'd have been standing here a year ago, I might have shared a crisis of confidence after 3 years of this work, because it didn't seem like anything was changing whatsoever. But I'm very happy to say that it feels like things are really changing now after 3 years. The very language that people are using to talk about energy in our sector has changed, because our campaign has been so public. The demand for alternatives has reached a point where there are now a range of suppliers in the industry that are starting to offer viable solutions. So I feel we're at a tipping point, and I feel that at least for those festivals that want to choose green options, it is now cost effective. This knowledge base the last 3 years of this work has provided, rather excitingly, is now contributing to a European-wide project called EE Music. We're using this knowledge with 9 European partners to disseminate across 27 European countries. And Julie's Bicycle's IG Tools, which is a fantastic online calculator, is being used as the way for festivals to access monitoring and measurement. Of course, you can't improve if you don't know where you started from. So that's very exciting. Taking it right down to scale, Shambhala Festival, we decided in 2007 we wanted to be 100% renewable, but it was virtually impossible. Like I said a moment ago, the suppliers were small scale, they're unreliable, and the technology hadn't caught up in terms of temporary solutions. So first steps were for us to opt for waste vegetable oil biofuel, to stick with the existing technology in terms of generators, because that's how we get enough power quickly and reliably. We've gradually started introducing solar and wind into the equation. This year we're hoping is a turning point for us, because we're working with Firefly Solar. I'm not sure if Firefly Solar are here actually, but to pioneer the first significant festival being run by hybrid power. I think the technology has been around for a while but hasn't been applied to temporary situations. Essentially, we're talking about generators, battery storage and other inputs, solar arrays. Wind turbines, a bit tricky for festivals because of the amount of space and the fact that it might not be windy. And it has to be windy that weekend, of course. But it's clever kit, it talks to each other. So while the generator's running, if it's not running at capacity, it's dumping the excess into the batteries. If the demand overnight, which is often the case, is very, very low, then you can switch the generator off, or it switches off completely, and you can run off the renewable sources and the battery storage. And field trials of this stuff is indicating a reliable 30% reduction in the amount of fuel use. Now that's great for us, already using waste vegetable oil biofuel, because the less fuel we use and the less costs we have, and the more renewables we can put into the mix, is great. But more importantly, for the mainstream festival industry, it's offering a very viable, cost-effective alternative that can accompany diesel generators. It doesn't represent more risk, and it does represent a reduction in cost, and it does represent a reduction in carbon. So we think this is going to be a game changer. So to sum up, that's a very brief insight into our journey in the creative industries, in our relationship with energy, and I'm happy to say that we feel very positive.